cover letters. Are they important? Do you really need to do a cover letter? Because sometimes they say, optional cover letters. Like, do I need to write one? I've already put in all this work into my resume. So I'll start back with you, Patricia, since you just brought it up, and then we can kind of loop back around again.
Yeah, for some of our roles, it absolutely is necessary. So for our editorial roles, we want to see how you write. You know what I mean? We want to see how you articulate and communicate. So it is actually key and required. Actually, I think for those roles, it's a required field. So you actually can't submit your application without a cover letter. So it really depends. I think that it depends on the type of the role, and I also believe that it depends on if you're looking to make a transition in your career. It's helpful to have that added, summary to really help us understand, what's the shift, mean to you? What would you be able to bring to this opportunity given your experiences? I do read them. So as they come in, because those things are truly helpful, even if it's a senior level position. I want to have an understanding. We do assessments, for some senior level roles. So we're asking leadership level talent to be able to submit something that we can review that helps us understand their methodology, perhaps around strategy, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it depends on the position and what you're trying to do. If you're trying to move into a non-traditional space, I think cover letters can be incredibly helpful as supportive information as well.
I definitely agree in every aspect of what Patricia just said as well. I mean, I think, I shouldn't say I think, I know it's so important, especially for editorial roles, or especially if you're trying to make a transition or shift into a new area, new industry, new space. Maybe you've been out of the industry or you were out of work for a while as well. A cover letter is super important. Just to really amplify yourself. Even if you're working within this space, it's also just good. It's another opportunity for you to showcase yourself, showcase your skills, highlight what you've been doing. I think also, especially now, now that we're still kind of coming out of this pandemic, I think that's another opportunity if you were out of work as well, or maybe you were doing other things. Maybe you were working in freelance opportunities or doing other type of things. Maybe you took some classes or courses. That's another opportunity to show people specifically what you were doing during that period of time if you were out of work while you're looking for it. So I feel like a cover letter is a great opportunity and chance for you to really showcase yourself, highlight who you are, the things you've been doing, things that you're doing as well, and also paying attention to what the company is and the role. Because by doing that, it's a great opportunity for you to showcase specifically what you think, like why you're interested in the company, why you over someone else versus just sending the resume. It's another step. And I think it's very necessary for people to do that, regardless of level or position. And yeah, and I know there's been some other questions in the chat in terms of like pictures on resumes. It's not necessary. I would say for the most part, don't. I feel like if you want to put your picture somewhere, definitely LinkedIn is great, right? We can go to your LinkedIn. If you have a website or a personal page, if you're a social media person, we can check your social for that. But I would say for the most part, having the picture on the resume really isn't necessary. It doesn't give you a boost or do anything else there. It probably just takes up more real estate on your resume, where you can use that real estate for other things. For the most part, so I feel like that's something that I would stay away from.
Well, it's funny because I came here tonight thinking, who needs a cover letter? And now after listening to what I've listened to, I'm like, oh wait, yeah, no, cover letter is a really good idea. I mean, for for design positions, I'm mostly looking actually, like, aside from experience, like how they design their resume. But for editorial positions, absolutely, like you want to show that you're a good writer. And I do sort of see it as like kind of going the extra mile, because a lot of people skip it, and then you're like, So if you're like weighing one candidate versus another, and someone's like really like captured your interest, it's just that little extra thing. So I'm totally converted. Yes, cover letter.
95% of cover letters, in my estimation, do not work on behalf of the applicant, and 5% do. And for me, a cover letter is not everything you can think of or everything that you've done, especially when you're a young job seeker and you may not have done enough. And sometimes the cover letter gets down into having worked at a restaurant or having managed, some schedule in a embroidery factory and some things that are not relevant. For journalism, for me, I want to know that you can write well, and I want the cover letter to say pretty much two things: why you're in this business and I know there are a variety of jobs open with all the talented people here tonight, but to write a story, to write and report, I want to know why you've chosen this, because it's not exactly the comfiest life, and it's not exactly the highest ranked profession. We must be behind, Congress people or something like that. But I want to know what your commitment is. And the other thing I want to know is why you're interested in this job that you're applying for. I don't really want to say anything that's a form letter or that could be appropriate for any job. So pretty much why you're in the business, and what thoughtful reason you have for wanting this job. That says a lot, because it means you research the job, maybe you research the company, and it doesn't have to be long. It can be short and sweet, like Ernest Hemingway. It can be black type on a white piece of paper. I want to hear from your mind and your heart about your commitment to the business.
No, absolutely, James. That is a great point. For me, cover letters kind of allow you or us as the recruiters to get kind of a snapshot of who you are as the applicant, right? So we definitely want to kind of, keep it unique and professional at the same time. So we want an idea of kind of like who you are, what you're looking to do, and things like that. But one of my biggest pet peeves with cover letters is knowing your audience or using a generic one. A lot of times we come across cover letters where people have had a generic type cover letter, and it's addressed to a certain company or a certain individual. And for me, if I was in the market for a job and another HR job, I wouldn't want my current cover letter to say Crain Communications when I'm going after another company. So that's something to definitely keep in mind. And I see people failing to update it when they submit their cover letter. So definitely be mindful of that piece.
Yeah, it's not fun when we get the cover letter addressed. I get it addressed to Joe Smith, and it's they're sending it to me, or for Vox, and they're sending the cover letter to me, right? So be careful with that. And if a cover letter is requested, write one. I've got that story too. We all have them, right? but because we do have on our ATS, we put, there's a little text box that says cover letters, while not required, they are reviewed, we love them, and we read them. And I've had people put in comments, I don't believe that you actually read cover letters. I think this is just automated system. And if you really want one, then ask me.
Yeah.
I'm not going to ask you. It's okay to have a personality, but to be kind of snarky like that is a little, I would think, goes a little bit across the line there. But yeah, cover letters do help. And they help explain, maybe you're making a cross-country move, and we're looking at, okay, you're in Chicago, my position's in New York. I don't know that you really, are you just clicking on things and applying? But it can help to explain why this position is right for you, and why you're interested in it, that sort of thing.
We have one cover letter question here from Cassie, who says the challenge for job seekers is not knowing what stories on the cover letter will resonate with the recruiter. So does anyone have any thoughts about that? Yeah, James, go for it.
I do, and I kind of made some notes about that. There are two ways to be a reporter, and the job is a blend of both. You cover stuff that happened, and you cover why it happened, or you take readers behind the news, or you find the trends that are really redefining how we live. So I'm always looking for stories, even from young journalists, that are analytical, or whose headlines start with why and how. And I can't stress that enough. It's good to cover a news story and get breaking news right on deadline. We all do that. We all still need to do it. But it's really good to be authoritative about why something happened. And that's pretty much the differentiating line between, for ad age readers, stories that perform really well online. Here's some knowledge that I can make some sense out of the headlines with, as opposed to stories that are in fact just the headlines. So I would encourage anybody who has stories like that to make sure that we can find them when you tell them to us, either on the resume or on the cover letter. And also make sure they're not behind a paywall somewhere. That often happens. But I think it's analysis and how and why, and going behind the headlines.
Another question here, and it's a bit of a lengthy one. It's an anonymous attendee, but it says, I'm having a difficult time trying to secure job interviews and offers in entertainment news, even though I have the experience. do recruiters purposely pick candidates who went to schools that are known to pump up music, entertainment, media professionals such as Syracuse, USC, NYU, Hofstra, etc.? Because I didn't go to any of those schools. So I guess, does your school matter, or what can this person do?
It makes no difference. I'm sorry to go again first. It makes no difference to me what school someone attended. I'm looking for skills and experience. I'm looking for somebody that's spent every spare moment when not in class writing, whether that's for the college newspaper, the high school paper, what they did that summer. That's very important to me. And I've hired people from Harvard and from Rutgers and from Fairleigh Dickinson, and I have never found a real discernible qualitative difference among them that is not made up by street smarts and hustle and being open to criticism and always willing to learn. You just want somebody who can continue to improve their skills the whole damn time.
I totally agree with James. It's really like the stuff that you're bringing. School doesn't matter. It's the person and what they can do.
Okay, someone has just asked, what about journalists who are from another country who weren't trained in the US? Does that make a difference? Maybe if you haven't heard of the media company that they worked for when they were outside of the US. Ramika?
Not necessarily, not for me. Like I said, when I'm looking at the resumes, I'm looking at the portfolios and things like that. I'm looking for the skill set, the editorial context, depending on whether it's a creative role, whatever the case may be. If they fit the bill and they're bringing the skill set and it's recognizable from first glance, like I said, at the portfolio, the links, their samples and things like that, then the school or them not being a native of the U.S. isn't necessarily the biggest issue for me.
Right. And what about like samples? What about writing samples? What if you're on your talent? How do you showcase that without sending a super huge long resume? What's the best way to showcase that?
For me, just the links. A lot of times I have people who will send me like a web page where I can kind of reference all of their content. So that's really, really good for me. I've had people who sent, just like snapshots of small articles, more like the insert type thing. Those are helpful as well. But for the most part, just the links to something that I can actually see, read, and understand for the most part.
I would say having an online portfolio where you can, a collection, so then it's one link and, people will have different areas, different parts of their work, maybe organized on that. I don't know where to say to recommend where to put it. I mean, because there's a lot of different platforms that you might be able to have something hosted on. It doesn't have to be super fancy, as long as it's one link that then we can go to and see different examples of your work.
Yeah, since this all comes in digitally anyway, for the most part, we're just, the link is embedded in the cover letter or the resume, and it can go to a collection of that person's work. It's the easiest.
Does having short stints at news organizations count against you? Say 1 to a half year, 1.5 year at different news outlets?
I don't know if it goes against you. I mean, I think sometimes hiring managers will have the impression of, longevity in a role. Maybe you're hopping around a lot. But I think also like that's where your cover letter comes into play, where you can really address and talk through specifically, why maybe those changes happen, right? There could be so many things in terms of reorgs, changes in structure, changes in the role. Obviously over the course of the last, 16 months roughly, we had this global pandemic. So, right, talking about maybe there were changes, maybe there were cuts, maybe there were furloughs, right? So just talking about that and being able to reference that on your cover letter, I think is a great way to talk through that. It's a trade-off, right? Because some places will see that as a negative. I've heard people say like people like to see stability, and other places will see someone who's worked in a temporary capacity or has freelanced a lot as you're able to be hired in multiple places, right? So you obviously had something that made all these other companies want to kind of move forward and hire you or to work with you. So there's two different schools of thought. So I don't know if it's 100% either way, but I feel like that's where you can use those other opportunities like a cover letter to really showcase that, to really highlight specifically what's happened, or kind of, in a sense, as we mentioned, really craft that story.
So lots of questions are coming in. This one's for you, Sandra. It says, if we are building a portfolio from scratch for a career change, is there a minimum amount of projects, articles that should be included on our website?
I think you want to err on the side of quality versus quantity. So just pick the best of what you've got and don't worry about like loading it up, because you like generally what happens is like you're like, oh, okay, maybe this doesn't look like it's enough. And I'm going to throw in a few of these that were like sort of okay. And I'm going to put them at the bottom. And like you can just tell. So I wouldn't like over worry not having enough. It would be more about like about the quality. I mean, there's lots of places to like host these things. There's lots of like out of the box website building, places out there. There's a
So another question is, how many of your organizations use AI for the first review at the beginning of search? How important is it that your resume use words that are in the job description?
We at Crain, we don't use AI. We are the AI.
Yes.
No, wait, we're not artificial. We're the RI, real
Right.
intelligence.
And Vox,
But having those keywords though are helpful because we're working like that in a lot of capacities. We're looking for them. We might be looking for Drupal. We might be looking for Omniture or whatever type of platform or whatever it is that we're looking for. We're looking for that word. So it is good to have those.
We don't have AI at Vox either, but I will say, yes, we do look into keywords as we're trying to do our Boolean searches to see, how we can shore up a short list of candidates immediately. Sometimes we can get upwards of 600 to 1,000 resumes for one job. So of course we're not going to go through each of those. So the keywords actually help us shore up a short list that we can then review and then continue to do that in an iteration. So they are helpful for us to be able to quickly shortlist resumes that come in for certain positions.